Hello everyone, thanks to those who are joining in right now. This is your Transmute Yourself weekly live show where we talk about topics related to fear of commitment so that you can create your own fulfilling relationships. And this is your host, Javier Peñalba. Today we'll talk about dealing with obsessive thoughts, and specifically we'll go into relationship OCD, or relationship obsessive-compulsive disorder, which is very related to fear of commitment. Okay, so let me first tell you a little bit of my experience so you know where I'm coming from with this topic. I have always been a person with what I tended to call a sticky mind, right? Or a sticky brain, meaning words, phrases that other people say or that I say, songs, experiences, things like that. They just turn to repeat themselves as in a loop in my head, right? And they just get locked in my head for can be minutes or hours sometimes. I never thought of it as a problem. I just thought that's how I am. I know that some people in my family, close relatives, also have a little bit of this, and I said it's okay, right? Since I can remember, meaning since I was a child. Well, I never again thought of it as a problem, with the only part of me being a bit distracted very easily. But then once I started dating, and my latent fear of commitment was there, these two things combined with each other, and it ended up being something that created a lot of anxiety and did not allow me to really be mindful of whatever I was doing, actually being very distracted and very anxious. It didn't really allow me to stay at peace with myself. So that was one of the main reasons why, in a combination with the fear of commitment, I ended up quitting relationships very soon after they started. So how did that look like? Pretty much what happened is that, let's say that I had a thought. The thought could be anything like, what if I'm not in love? Or what if this isn't love, right? What if I could be in a better relationship, or I would be happier in another relationship? Then that would trigger many other thoughts, obsessive thoughts, that would make me anxious, and then I would try to counter those thoughts with other thoughts that made me more anxious, and then I couldn't quit that loop, right? So this is in a nutshell how relationship OCD looks like. I will disclose right now what in general OCD is. Then I will go deeper again into relationship OCD. I just gave you that little example. And we'll see about a method also to deal with this that worked with me and I know is very effective. So let's start. First, in general, what is OCD? Again, it is an obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't like to call it a disorder. That's how psychologists call it. I prefer to go into the direction of it's simply an imbalance in how we think, or imbalance in like an emotional imbalance based on our mindset in general, based on how we think. It's not a disease. It's not like schizophrenia or bipolarity disorder, things like that. I'd say it's something that has a cure, that with the right method and the right mindset, you can get ahead with this and have a lot of progress with, in general, an obsessive mind and with OCD. All right, so first I'll tell you the elements of OCD. First, there's a trigger, right? A trigger, it can be a thought, it can be an intrusive thought, it can be an image, it can be something that, in general, it is something that triggers something within you that makes you afraid of something. In general, what you're afraid of, and this is very subconscious, is an emotion, something that you don't want to feel. And as you don't want to feel that triggers anxiety, and also that voice in our heads that we all have. It triggers what they call an obsession, right? The obsession is simply the thoughts, the recurrent thoughts that come out of the trigger. So it's usually thinking about what you saw, what you thought, etc., for hours and hours and hours. So in order to stop that, what happens is that we develop a defense mechanism to relieve a little bit of that anxiety and to feel better about what you're thinking. And you do that through a compulsion. The compulsion is pretty much a behavior, a ritual. It can be something internal that you do, or it can be something external that allows you to feel a little bit of relief from the obsession. So I will give you an example with, in general, how an OCD from not relationship OCD, we'll get into that, but in general. And some people are afraid of germs, bacteria, virus, right? And in general, call it like a phobia of germs. So let's say that they touch a doorknob, and they have this thought that they are afraid of that it's dangerous, that they touch something dirty and that they can get sick, that those germs will be all over their body, and they cannot stop them thinking about it. So the trigger there is the doorknob. The thought, the obsession, right, that comes along with that is, what if I'm gonna get sick? It's not possible that I touch something so dirty. This is horribly contaminating. Those are the obsessions, right? And then the compulsion is to go and wash your hands. So in this case, it's a very easy to tell or to identify type of OCD, right? Because there's an external behavior, there's an external ritual, so to say. And people in general can know, like, oh, there's something there, something wrong, and it's a little bit easier to diagnose, right? And maybe to get sick, to get help. But then I'll give you another example. Some people have the tendency to straighten all of the paintings because everything has to be balanced, or in general, they cannot see anything out of balance or out of order, because they just have the tendency to go and do that. So it's the same thing. The trigger is the painting that's not straight, and then the obsession is the thoughts, and then the compulsion is to do something about it, which is to straighten it. That's the ritual. Now, the problem, let's go with relationship OCD, right? With relationship OCD, the trigger is usually a thought. The thought can be anything like, what if I am not in love? What if this isn't love? What if I'm missing out on real love elsewhere? What if I'm not attracted to my partner? Another trigger can be a flaw, right? It can be that there's what they call like physical relationship OCD. So you get obsessed with a flaw that you consider to be extremely sort of not appealing, and then of course you look for that, and you look for the opposite in other people. The trigger can be even seeing other people without that flaw, and then you start thinking, oh, why am I with this person who has this flaw? And then that can trigger the loop, right, the cycle. So these are other examples of how the triggers with relationship OCD look like. In some people, it can also be movies. So any movie that's very romantic, something that can sort of get you into the distorted idea of what love is. For example, Disney movies and things like that can make you think, oh, that's love, not what I'm having in my relationship. And then that triggers the cycle, right? That can trigger the obsession, and then the compulsion can be to think the other way, and then you stay in that loop. Now, something interesting to note here is that there's also what they call avoidant behavior. Most OCDs include an avoidant behavior, meaning that you want to avoid the trigger. So some people can avoid romantic movies. Other people can avoid leaving their house because there's the chance that they will see prettier people, or that they will see single people that are having a lot more fun than they might be having in their relationship. And that can be a horrible trigger. Or they avoid parties because they don't want to feel that they're missing out on that fun, right? So all of these are avoidant behaviors. So that's the first thing to know about how relationship OCD works. Now, the main complication with this is that as it is not, again, an external compulsion or a ritual, people with relationship OCD don't even recognize themselves as having that. You know, they simply think that it feels so real, it feels that it's simply not the right relationship, or that what they're thinking is the reality. And what ends up happening is that they never seek help. They never tell anyone about this because they simply think that that's how things are. But the reality is that behind all of that, there is a mental or cognitive distortion, meaning wrong ideas of how the world works or should work, that is creating all of that. And as a result, then um, people don't do anything, they simply quit the relationships. Something else is that these are not very rational thoughts, right? It's not like with the germs or with the paintings in relationship OCD. You know that people break up all the time, they change partners all the time. So when you think about it, it doesn't sound that irrational. But the fact that you're having to think so much about whatever it is, that is a sign already that it is not the situation itself that's causing it. It is really your mind. Let me tell you that in general, I used to spend, when I had this problem in a, let's say, intense way, some years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, in my previous relationship, I would spend 6 to 8 hours in that loop. You know, so, and that's also the case for many people with relationship OCD. Okay, so let's go now with a method to overcome this. You know a little bit already how it works. I will tell you more about it in the process, but let's go with what's called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. This is usually what's used for phobias, for OCDs, for anxiety and other things. And it contains two parts, right? The cognitive part, meaning the idea, understanding the distorted ideas that are creating your anxiety, that are creating these obsessions, and thus the distorted way of thinking in general, and irrational fears, right? Irrational thoughts. So understanding that part is a process, and in the process understanding yourself. And what I mean by the cognitive part also is understanding the truth, or something closer to the truth, behind those distortions, right? The second part is the behavioral part. The behavioral part is pretty much, it is changing your behaviors so that you live in a normal, peaceful way. With OCD, what does this look like? It looks like facing your triggers. And in general, what this will do is that it will teach your brain that the trigger, be it a thought, be it a film, be it an image, whatever it is not dangerous. So you're pretty much conquering a fear through this. So I see in itself relationship OCD as a great opportunity to get to know yourself better, and even to increase your bond in your relationship, because as a result of this, you will become a lot more peaceful and more loving and accepting of yourself and of your issues, because there's a lot of self-judgment involved with OCD that people don't even recognize, I would say, or realize. So that's in a nutshell CBT. The first part that I will talk about is the cognitive part related to relationship OCD, and it is to identify your triggers. So you can write down in a notebook what it is that you're running away from, that you're avoiding, or that simply triggers you, triggers your obsessions, triggers the compulsions and these behaviors. So if it is a thought, for example, of what if this isn't love, or what if I'm missing out on something that's more fun, what if I would be happier if I were single? Maybe you see that your friends who are single have a lot of fun, and so those are the triggers, right? It can be thoughts, it can be the actual situations of going to a party, or watching a certain type of movie, or looking at certain type of people. Those can be the triggers. Then you want to understand what's behind that. And that's a little bit the hard part. If you're very conscious, or if you really want to work on yourself, you can do it on your own. You can simply ask, how true is this really? Or ask why 4 or 5 times to the trigger, to the thought behind the trigger. Ask 4 or 5 times why, and then try to find the truth behind it. How true is it really? Why is it that other people aren't going through this? If they're at the same situation externally, what is happening really? And try to understand your truth in the process. If it's hard, and I understand it because there's a lot of things that can be involved in this, then you can get help, right? You can get help from a psychologist or from a therapist. And in general, I think that's the best way. But also there's many books, there's many videos, there's a lot of material that you can use to get to know yourself better. Now, I want to note that when people work with me for their fear of commitment, a lot of these fears that trigger, that are part of the trigger that create the obsessions, those are the things that we work on. So fear of missing out, fear of rejection, for example, fear of losing your freedom or of being controlled, all of those things are, that's why there's a big link with relationship OCD, right? And those are the things that we work on, that cognitive part, so that people get to know themselves better. Now let's go to the behavioral part. This can be also a bit hard at times, but once you get used to it, believe me, true liberation is on the other side, and true peace. So I will, there's many methods. I will disclose one that's called the Claire Weeks 4-step method, which is specific for, for OCD, for phobias, and for other things. And I believe that it is a very powerful one. But in general, most methods encompass the same idea, which is to lose the fear of the emotion that you're trying to avoid by avoiding the trigger or by having those compulsions. So the first step is to expose yourself to the trigger. Once you have your list of triggers, right, you can take this decision on your own, whether to find the strongest trigger, or you can start with the lighter one, with the lowest intensity one. I prefer to start with the strongest one, because I know that once I can work that one out, then the rest will just fall off, because they're all connected. Once you know how to overcome one fear, because this is pretty much a fear of a thought or of a trigger, once you overcome one, you know the process to do the rest, and you won't fear them as much because you already went through the boss, through the one that was causing you the most struggle in your head. So that's the first step. And you can design by yourself, or through the help of your coach or of your therapist, you can design your exposures, meaning it can be simply sitting down 5-10 minutes and thinking the thought that is making you miserable. So if the thought is, what if I would have a lot more fun in another relationship? Or what if I'm missing out on true love? All right, so you think that, and this is the say the funny part. You won't engage in the compulsion. You won't engage in telling yourself why that's not the truth. You will actually dig deeper into the obsession by telling yourself an exaggerated story about what you're thinking. So what if this isn't love? Oh my God, right? And then you can tell yourself, yes, this isn't love. Actually, this is the most horrible relationship that I'm in a prison. This is the worst thing in the world. Simply exaggerate it. On the one hand, you will start not giving that much importance to what you're thinking, because you will notice, oh my God, this is just my thoughts telling me these things, and I know that that's not true. This is not the worst relationship ever, for example. But it can, and on the other hand, it can create a lot of anxiety, and this is what we're looking for here, although it sounds counterproductive. What you're trying to do then with exposing yourself is one, on the one hand, to lose the fear of the thought because you're facing it directly without the compulsion. And on the other hand, you're getting used to the emotion that comes with that thought. So with the anxiety, it can be also with the guilt. So if you feel, for example, that the thought again is, what if this is in love? Then you will feel guilt. You will feel guilty because you're in a way thinking powerlessness as well. There might be frustration, all of that. But those are, so to say, quote unquote, fake emotions because they're coming from just thoughts that are in general distortions. Right? So these are just things that you're thinking that are generating that. So you want to get used to that and stop fearing that guilt, stop fearing those other things that I said. So that's the second purpose of exposing yourself to that. It's important to understand that this can create anxiety, right? So if you have a 100% of anxiety, normally just engaging in your normal obsessive and compulsive behavior, then this can get you into a 120, 130% of anxiety. And it's okay because of the next step, right? The next step is to accept. So you will have anxiety and you have to accept that all in your body. You have to feel it and simply stay, I wouldn't say calm because it's hard, right? It is anxiety, but still stay strong without fighting it, right? Simply stay with it without resisting the anxiety and accept it, surrendering completely to it. You will realize after you do it for some time that you'll start even getting comfortable in the discomfort and then you start losing the fear of that emotion and then you conquer your greatest fear, right? If you conquer your greatest fear, there's nothing that can take you down anymore. So this can be hard. Again, it can raise your anxiety, but it will eventually and naturally go down. And the more you do it, it won't go to 120, it will go to 115, 10. Suddenly, you'll feel that 100 where you stayed naturally goes to 50% and then goes down because you're pretty much teaching your brain to feel an emotion that it didn't want to feel and to understand that it's not dangerous. The more you understand that, the stronger you become. So that's the second step, right? Accepting fully. The third step is the method sets to float in the discomfort or to float in the emotion. It means pretty much to go about your day as normal, feeling that, simply ignoring it, not paying it that much attention. You can distract yourself, you can do something productive, read a book, you can meditate, for example. In general, you can stay mindful. It might be that the obsession comes. Try not to engage in compulsion in this step. Simply observe it. Use mindfulness as much as possible, meaning observing your mind, observing your body without identifying yourself to that. And you'll see how this will subside and subside and subside. So again, you can do anything to distract yourself as well. And what you're doing here is you're teaching your body, you're teaching your anxiety itself that it is not stronger than you and that it doesn't have the power to make you stop your day. And the more you do it, the more positive feedback you will get in your body that it's not dangerous and actually that you can even have fun, you know? And this is the third step, floating. The fourth step is pretty simple, is simply letting time pass. So this is not a process that in a day will make your OCD or relationship OCD or in general your obsessive behavior go away, but it can be that within a month, for example, or within a couple of months, it's less, right? It has decreased so much that you live a lot more in peace. So in some people, in cases that of people that have been having OCD for decades, it can take a year of doing that almost every day. In my case, I did this for about a month. So I would sit down almost every day just with those thoughts that made me obsessive, right? And I would sit down for 10 minutes, I would engage in that and feel that anxiety, then go about my day. And after about 30 days, I felt a lot better, like this isn't bothering me anymore. And then when other obsessive thoughts come, because as an obsessive person, this can extrapolate to other areas, right? Not just relationships. I know already that what to do about it, and it is pretty much what I do is to just exaggerate the story and to tell whatever I'm fearing, like I'm open completely, just open the doors to whatever wants to come, whatever emotion, whatever thought, just be open to it. You realize that there's nothing to fear, and then your obsessions will naturally subside. So that's it, right? It took me about a month, and other people, again, I have read some cases of people that it took them a day just by realizing that what they had was OCD, and by exposing themselves once, they were like, well, man, this is what I'm fearing, this is just a thought. They got that little moment of a little enlightenment moment at that moment, and they just got rid of it. And some people have read it, it's been like a week or two. In some it takes longer. It depends on every person, right? And how conscious you do this process. And it's important as you're doing it, is that you understand that it is a healing process, and that it is normal again to feel the anxiety and to feel these emotions, but sometimes you have to get worse in a way before you get better. Now, some other notes that I want to give you on this. I don't do this anymore, right? I don't expose myself that much when I have certain thoughts. In general, what has helped me after that process and in the process has been meditation. I would say that there has been some type of change in my brain because I do it twice, sometimes even 3 times a day. And what it does is that I used to have this buzz in my head, as many thoughts as they going like at 100 kilometers per hour, saying one thing and the other, right? The more that I have learned to quiet my mind and to stay mindful of my body and of my consciousness behind the mind, behind the body, and to stop identifying myself with all of these thoughts, the more that I can just draw that line and separate that, and meditate, not just actively as in sitting down, but also as I'm walking, as I'm working, simply feeling a little bit that presence. I have seen how the thoughts in general have subsided and went decelerated from 100 kilometers per hour, as I said, to maybe 30, 35, and that's more manageable, it just slowed down a lot. So this, I think that in the long run is a huge help. But of course, if you're meditating and you're still fearing all these thoughts and all of that, I think that the process that I disclosed is very important, so that you stop fearing your head, you stop fearing your mind in general and your emotions. So this has been it for today in general about OCD, relationship OCD, and the Claire Weeks process, and CBT, right? Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. I hope that you have enjoyed it. It has been a lot of fun for me to talk about this. And if there's any questions, I will check right now. Again, I will see you very soon. Let me tell you that next week I will not have a weekly show. I will postpone that to the week after, because next Saturday, not this one, but the next one, I will have another workshop of about 1 hour and a half on From Fear to Love. So I'll repeat the workshop from last time in order to maybe get other people that are interested and help them out as well. I think that it was very successful in the previous occasion. So you're invited, and I will post an official invitation about this. All right, so let me check if there's any questions. And again, I want to thank everyone for being here. I see some comments. So, well, first of all, hello, Mariela, Juan Jose, Tia Patricia, Francesca. All right, Jose, thanks everyone for being here. Let's see. Sometimes when anxiety is very strong, it is difficult even to distract yourself. That's the first comment that I have from Francesca, and that's completely true. I would say that the acceptance part, which means it's pretty much a surrendering yourself to the anxiety. That's a step that can help first, right? Before you start distracting yourself and everything, you can even just sit down with that anxiety, with whatever emotion you're feeling. Sit down with it. Simply pay attention to what you're feeling, not much to your head, but to what you're feeling, and you will see you can even make it bigger, right? If you're feeling anxiety, all right, open the doors, make it as big as possible, and stay with that for 5 minutes. You'll see how eventually it subsides and you're not fearing it anymore. So it goes back to the exposure thing that I was saying before. And then as it gets lower, right, you can start distracting yourself, you can do other things. As it reaches a certain level, if it was a 10, maybe it went to a 6 or a 5, and now you're a little bit more functional. As you're doing other things, it will go down even more because you're not thinking about it. But this first step of simply paying attention to yourself, to your body, without that much attention to the thoughts, can be of a lot of help. So it's pretty much like a meditation. Now, someone else says, how to eliminate the fear, Mariela, right? To a thought that produces a lot of panic and attack. It's in the mind, right? It's not easy. This is exactly what I've been disclosing, right? And everything is actually in the mind. There's nothing external unless it's really a real threat. But in general, these things that I'm talking about are mind threats, are mental threats, are just ideas that we fear. So if you can expose yourself to the idea, to the thought that you fear, and feel the anxiety without running away from it, you'll realize that the actual fear of the fear of the anxiety is many times greater than the actual act of facing it with courage. Once you're there, yes, you will feel anxious, but you won't die of that. You will probably sweat your hands, you will get blush a little bit, you might lack the breath a little bit, things like that, but it will not go beyond a certain point. And just stay breathing, just stay conscious of your body, uh, breathe deeply at those moments, and then after some time it will just subside. And you do it again and you'll notice how the anxiety is way less, because you're facing your fear, you're conquering your fear pretty much, and you're freeing yourself from it. So that question, Mariela, this is pretty much the whole thing that I've been disclosing and discussing. Facing the thoughts that we fear so that they don't chase us anymore, because they won't make us afraid anymore. In the end, they're just thoughts, nothing but thoughts. Now, what is better way to do meditation at home, and how many times, minutes? Well, there's many ways and methods of meditation, right? Remember when I started with Headspace, it's pretty much just a mindfulness type of meditation that makes you focus on your breath, then focus on a sound, focus on what's around you. I would recommend that you try that, for example, or any type of mindfulness meditation. That's a great start. Something that I recommend also is to pay attention to each sense. That's another type of meditation when you're having a lot of anxiety, right? And you have already exposed yourself to the thought, and you do the work that's before that, because that's important in understanding what's behind it. If you want to try this, focusing on each sensation and sense means you first focus on what you're looking, right? So you have anxiety in your body, you have thoughts, but you're focusing on simply everything that you're looking at. You stay there for like 3 minutes. So focus on the wall, on the colors. Simply stay present with that inner presence, that inner energy while you're doing that. Not on the thoughts, right? You start there, then you can start, after 3 minutes, you can start focusing on the touch. So how do the clothes feel on your body, right? Again, have that consciousness or that focus on your consciousness, meaning not on the thoughts, but on the presence, that inner energy that's within you, that life pretty much, that helps to detach yourself from the thoughts. So, for example, if you're touching a table, focus on that, focus on the on how your feet feel on the floor. 3 minutes, then you go with the taste. For example, maybe you just ate bubble gum, or you just had dinner or something. Focus on that, 2 3 minutes. You keep going with sound, and what's the last one? Well, I missed one. I think there's five senses. I missed one, but you know what I mean. So focus for 2 or 3 minutes on each sense, and then you'll see how suddenly you're not even thinking of what you were thinking, or it subsides a lot. That's just a very simple type of meditation. Um, yeah, but in general, there's a lot. How many minutes? I would recommend, if you're very anxious, if you're very stressed, start low. Start with 3 minutes, and you can do 3 minutes 3 times a day, and that's enough at the beginning, because you're starting to get acquainted with your head and with your mind. Then you can increase it a little bit, maybe 4 5 minutes. Next day, 4 minutes, let's say 5 minutes. You should do in general whatever feels right for you. I do 20 minutes to 30 minutes in the morning, and then same thing in the evening. But I started with 5 minutes. I tended to be a little bit uh, everywhere in my mind. So, and then I'm able to stay without thoughts for some time already because of practice, right? And then you can take that state of mind and of emotional state into your day to day, and you'll see things differently, right? You'll see things that used to trigger you as simply things that are happening, and you have a lot more control within yourself and in your head the more you do it. So it takes practice, but yeah, just start low. I would say 3 to 5 minutes maybe. All right, I think those are all the questions that I have. I hope that this has been of help to you. We will talk soon, and peace.